Welcome back to the Iron Sights Podcast. I'm here tonight with my good buddy JP at Train with Purpose Official. JP, welcome back to the studio. Good to see you, my friend.
What's up, dude? It's good to be here.
Always good to have you back. And we've been just kind of having these discussions, and there's been some experiences out there that we wanted to talk a little bit that are kind of relevant to things that have been kind of, we've seen sort of be popular in social media as of late. There's a lot of influencers, heavy influencers, some of these big hitters out there that are talking about things like, what do you do in the prep sense to be ready for the shit hits the fan? So talking about like 3-day go bags, or 3-day bags. How do you prepare for maybe an urban environment versus a wilderness environment? There's even been some talk about vehicles and things like that. And we've had sort of our own experiences, and you've recently done some stuff as well that I think is relevant to kind of this talk, and we've learned some things along the way. And as the dirty civilians that we are, maybe some stuff to add. So maybe bring some value to the table for those people that have been thinking about it, have their own questions. Maybe you can compare and contrast their experiences, and as per usual, just maybe bring a little bit different perspective.
Yeah, man. I know that being prepped has been a popular thing for a long time. But as you know, in our community, whether it's the 2A community or just the people who we hang out with, they're always looking for new things to train and buy. And, you know, it's fun for everybody, right? But also we value being prepped, whether that's on a daily basis or like the 3-day bag, which has been around for a long time. But also, like you said, big names have been talking about it lately. So me and a bunch of the guys, our friends, went out. We wanted to test that. We've been planning like 4 or 5 weeks now to head out to the mountains. We got to the snow. That was a little bit of a surprise considering it's about to be June. But yeah, we just wanted to test everything from, like you said, vehicles to hiking. And I'd have to say that we had a few different mindsets, and we had a few different styles or approaches to gear, right? And I was actually surprised about some of the outcome, but then also I wasn't surprised about some of it. And that's why I want to talk about this. You know what I mean? So, I mean, I guess we'll start off with the trip there, right? This is 3 days, 3 nights. I did 3 days, 2 nights because I actually had to get home the last night for something else. But
Which is great, but it's also a little bit of a limitation, right? Because you kind of have this compressed amount of time to get through kind of your agenda. And while part of the agenda is just being out with the boys, being out in nature, having fun, there's also like going out to the range for the day or going into the workout or the gym for a workout or for a session. There's some prep or organization that goes into this because you want to be able to measure, whatever it is that you went in there to do.
Yeah.
If I have this many exercises, this many reps and sets, I need to make sure I get through that. So I don't have all day to do that. I might have 90 minutes to get that done. I need to put that together. So I need to be mindful of this.
Yeah. And that's our group. Our group is like that, whether it's not to sound like super nerdy about this whole thing, but whether it's our training plan when we hit the range, we actually have like Google Docs and stuff like that. Or if it's in the gym, like everybody knows I have like the program that I post on my story, or everybody has the program, in their phone, right? So we all have a plan always. This didn't go exactly to plan, though.
It's interesting when you get that many people together in these outside environments. The other part about this is that I'll say is it's just, again, it's not one of those things you get to do as frequently. I mean, going to the range frequently is one thing. When you're talking about taking 2-3 days away where you've got to gain access to, in your case, this was the wilderness, which we'll talk about, or wherever the environment is, like, they're a little fewer and further between. So when you do go, you want to extract the most amount of value at all levels.
Exactly.
Right. So you're kind of trying to prepare for everything, but you also are trying not to, right? So that you can experience.
It's such a weird thing because I have very little experience with like wilderness, outdoor, anything, I mean, growing up, I've been camping, but I don't really have any experience doing that stuff. And as you guys know, like, I care about being prepped, but my vehicle's a stock Jeep Renegade Desert Hawk. So it's like 4-wheel drive. It's got a stock lift, but I mean, it's stock,
Right.
You know what I mean? But I set it up to where I can survive out of my car if I need to. And I didn't change anything for the trip. The only thing I changed is I took range gear out and I put a sleeping bag in. That's the only thing I changed. But anyway, yeah. So like we do want to fit everything in for 3 days, and that was a little bit hard. And also we did have a couple people who don't train with us that are like just backpackers and hikers that we thought would be valuable, that one of our friends in our group invited with us. So that kind of threw a wrench in the gears. It helped and hurt at the same time because we're all about the team mentality, and these guys were just like solo everything. Like they hung out with us, but when it came to like surviving, they were just like one person tents, dude.
Yeah, so that's interesting too, is like the team or the community environment, and the considerations you might have if you're on your own. Yeah. Is it just you, or is it you and your prepped community? And prepped is a very broad term. It is, right? We'll get into that actually at some level, but or is it you and like for me, is it my girlfriend and kid? Is there a dog? There's all these different considerations that you might go into in these situations or these training kind of situations, but also again, like having fun, like making it fun for everybody. And
we wanted to have a good time, and we did.
Yeah.
So that played a role too. So we were a little less organized on this one, and it's probably the most dangerous thing to not be organized with, but that's just how it ended up happening because the random assortment of people, and we actually switched the date on it. But anyway, so we ended up heading out. It's 5 hours from you guys, and it's about 3 hours from me.
So to give some context, we're talking about sort of the Central Sierra as well. Yeah, about this, like the Central Sierra Nevada mountains, right? So on the border of California, Nevada, it's sort of right in there. So high elevation.
Yeah,
right?
Frozen Lake.
So at this time of year, when we're recording this podcast, we're literally just on kind of this is Memorial Day weekend that we're just coming off of. So we're moving into June. It's spring, and at the higher elevations, let's say north of 8,000 feet, still quite a bit of snow.
Yeah.
And we got hit pretty hard, like in a weird snowstorm, like in April, which kind of snuck up on us and actually shut down the highways, like Highway 80, major interstate that goes through there. It got pretty gnarly up there. And so they got a bunch of like late winter snow. But at that elevate, when you get up like north of 8,000 feet, you start to see quite a bit of snow. And while it feels like summer down here, it's spring.
Dude, it was a trip.
Barely spring up there.
It was a trip. Like I wanted to get like fresh air. So I rolled my windows down, and then right away the seat warmers and heater turned on because I was like, fuck, this is cold.
It gets a little nippy up there. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Like to paint a picture here with our cars, our group likes to like build out their cars. We have a few 90s trucks in our group where, they kind of throw like campers and like they have like a fold out bed, drawer system, cooking area in the back of the car. And then we have people like me who just have a stock vehicle that's capable, but it's just barely capable. We had another guy that had another stock Jeep that was just fine. And then we had somebody with the backpacker, the two guys that are just backpackers. They're not like preppers. They're not like tactical dudes. And they had like a Toyota Tundra that was like totally like outfitted to like go anywhere. It's a Tundra, so it's kind of big, but it was outfitted. You know what I mean? And it was interesting seeing the difference between the cars. Oh yeah, and also Will's car is kind of weird because it's a Subaru Crosstrek. So it's kind of low, but it's totally like
it's basically off-road. A car that sits high.
Yeah, exactly.
It's an all-wheel drive car that sits high.
It's almost like a rally car, I would say. So he's got like off-road stuff for it. So him and me were kind of like on the border of making it through some of these mountains. We were driving up and down some pretty steep hills and big stones coming out of the ground. We actually had to drag a tree out from the road, like tow straps. And I think it's like a winch. I've never had to use that shit before, but I see the value in it now. It's not that expensive. I definitely would have bought my own set after experiencing this. But yeah, just getting to where we wanted to get to because we wanted to experience like everything. We didn't just want to camp. The first night we did a lot of overlanding, the first day, I should say, to get to our first campsite, which wasn't a campsite. We made it our campsite on the river. And it was fucking crazy to get there. And when we finally got there, it was a good time. And we had a camp, really chill. But leaving that the next morning, it actually took us like 3 or 4 hours to leave because some of the vehicles didn't make it back up the hill. And one of them actually ended up like having like a pretty much worn out differential and slid back into a tree. So he's going to remember this this trip forever as long as he has that car. We had to tow him out from the dirt on an incline, like really bad. Luckily, we had some guys with tow straps and off-road vehicles that were like pretty heavy duty.
So I think this is an important time to kind of introduce the concept, some of the concepts and being prepared for kind of things.
Yeah.
Right. So we haven't even gotten into what you might be carrying on your person. We're talking about this concept of mobility.
Just getting
right?
there.
Getting there. And so maybe that's on foot or maybe it's by vehicle. Now, there are considerations to think about here, obviously, and this isn't an entire lesson on, we could spend an entire podcast talking about mobility and barely scratch the surface from like a vehicle perspective. We're not going to do that.
I'm not going to get too techie on
it. But in your case, you were going to the wilderness, so you semi knew what to expect, right? But you that might not be somebody might be going to the desert wilderness, not the Sierra Nevada mountains. And that's a different kind of preparation.
Oh, definitely.
Similar, maybe in some cases, but different. You might be in a very urban environment and you might be looking at it very differently there versus like, do you want to be rolling around in a big old outfitted truck with basically says, I'm prepped and have weapons and all the food and all the things on there, on all the assets that you might want as an unprepped person in advertising that? Or do you want to be a little bit more incognito or stealthy in terms of, your vehicle? And
that definitely matters.
It's all consideration. So again, without getting too deep into that, interesting what you said there about people thinking they have like all the cool gear strapped to their vehicles.
Yeah.
But when they actually get out there to use them, they find they're very ill-equipped for the environment that's in front of them.
Yeah, I think in that particular case, because we all had different age groups in our cars, and also the car itself, I think even brand new, wasn't meant for overlanding. But when you have an older car and you're not actually building up the drivetrain and things like that, and like the tires and the wheels, like you kind of got to expect that this type of thing might happen.
You're just bolting stuff onto the outside.
Yeah. And then also, since the camper was set up so nice in terms of like kind of like a luxury camper that's like homemade, there was a lot of weight added to the truck bed. And our group didn't really talk about this, but since I have like a background in cars, I kind of knew what was going on here. And the car wasn't built to carry that extra weight on the truck bed, let alone climbing up an incline like this in like choppy dirt.
Yeah, these types of conditions.
Yeah, so that was that. But the backpackers had the pretty much brand new outfitted Tundra, and they did just fine. Them and Bryant helped us tow them out with straps and shit like that. My Jeep and Will's Subaru made it, but like I said, we're like barely making it through everything. But we're also in pretty standard cars. You know what I mean?
So good example of having team members or people within your community that you can count on when maybe you're coming to the table a little shy or short in some areas. I think this will come up again later.
Yeah.
But, where can your team help you? Where are your shortcomings, and understanding your strengths and your weaknesses as a group?
Yeah.
But also as the individual, and being highly aware of, I just became a liability real fast.
Yeah.
In this particular case.
Yeah, because it was totally on accident. Nobody expected that to happen. But it could have been
way worse, right?
But that did chew up, like I'd say 3-ish hours of our day, which ultimately led us into having a late hiking trip up a mountain filled with snow. So, none of this was planned. None of it was on purpose. We kind of just were like winging it, but that played a role in timing. And when you're out in the wilderness, like really trying to like live off the land, dude, timing matters. You know what I mean? Cause when it's dark, it's fucking cold as shit and you can't see anything. But that particular car and cars like that did really well when we camped that first night. Cause the first night was just supposed to be park, chill, have a good time with the boys, and then real fun backpacking starts second and third day, right? Where we just go live off of our rucks, And that night, we had that car and another car that were just cooking out the back with stoves and, grilling up shit, chicken curry, and just having a great time. Had twisted teas in the back. I don't drink alcohol, but that's what was going on.
Twisted teas, my word.
Yeah. So, it was a good time, but that's where the strength of that vehicle was, right? Like vehicles like that were like, we were just camping with the boys,
right.
And it was a little bit less crazy. But again, like the next night, when we actually had to leave, that was a little bit rough. But like I said, everything has its own strength. Like we all slept out of our cars that night, and my car was just fine to fold down the back seats, completely stock. Like I said, I just threw my sleeping bag and shit in the back and slept out of it just fine. They all like made beds in the back of their truck beds. Cause like I said, they like made like campers and shit like that. I think you know by now my approach. I try to keep things fairly simple.
Mm-hmm.
So I just my Jeep and a lot of my setup is just like very simple, and I'm trying to just rely on like me and like how capable I am at things, you know. But in terms of like off-roading and like the vehicle itself, like I said, I found that almost just buying a car that's meant for that is good enough. The camping thing, maybe in an urban setting, having the camper totally makes sense because I would never try to jack that car, a 90s truck, right. That or the other trucks like it in our group, you know. Excuse me. So that would make sense. And then like, you know, obviously the Tundra was like outfitted and you knew what you're looking at with the axe just mounted on the hood.
Yeah, but I find that funny because I see these guys driving around town all the time. I'm like, have you really ever put that to the test? I mean, there's skill level that goes involved. There's involved in stuff. And then there's also like, okay, that's great. And it works until it doesn't. So what happens when it doesn't work? Are you prepared for a flat tire? Are you prepared for, you know, your truck to roll over? And, you know, how do you get yourself out of these situations? And I'm not bagging on people that have overland. I have an overland vehicle myself.
Yeah.
Right? So but
it's also a different mindset. You and me have had this conversation before where I will never get a camper. I love Toyota Tacomas. And if I'm not mistaken, the back window does not roll down. I know Tundra windows roll down.
Yeah, I know. I think that you can get a slider. I think you can get a slider.
Well, my point is that I'm not a fan of like roof tents because I need to be able to get to the driver's seat.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I don't do roof tents.
Yeah. So like I like to be in the car so I can get to the driver's seat. And like I think that's because not only just being prepped, but that's just how we think about things because of like the tactical training and shit that we try to do, the self-defense training.
I don't like being locked and confined in a tight space that I can't get out of. I mean, I'll be honest, like if I'm in the wilderness, I feel fine in it, but I have slept in it in the city. I would get a camper shell, right? So let's call it a shell versus you know, like a full on camper.
Yeah. I'm talking about shells.
Right.
Yeah.
And I was not comfortable in it. I did run into a situation where let's just say a less than upstanding citizen was casing cars out in front around, and I was awake.
Yeah.
And they actually came out with very tinted windows on the pop out windows. So my windows, I have the back hatch flaps up like most camper shells would, but I also have the wing windows on the side where they pop up. So I could get out the side. But this dude was actually looking in car windows, and I saw him coming over. I knew what was about to happen. Puts his face and his hands right up to the window, and we're literally inches apart. Now, I saw this coming, so I was prepped for quick offense if I needed to. But I was in this very confined space, and it was not going to be a good situation. I was going to have to be first if something went down, and if all that person would need to do is move to a particular angle where I couldn't get to him or whatever. So going back to your situation and your setup and you're being confined in this space, like, think about that. Like, and being on the roof of your car and somebody else is in it, then basically there's no captain in your car.
Exactly.
That's a very bad situation to be in.
Yeah. And I think the reason why,
because you could be going for a ride and it might not be very fun.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I think the reason why I bring that up is because the mindset thing, right? So like, I have friends that have those roof tents and they're very fucking comfortable. But if your mindset is like, we're all just camping with the boys and
that's cool, we're
going to a campground, you're probably not going to run into any issues.
Yeah, get it.
But if you're like thinking in a defensive manner, like I want to be able to sleep, wake the fuck up and then roll into my front seat and bounce. You know what I mean? So that's why I prefer like the Jeep layout or like the 4Runner.
Yeah, everything's enclosed inside.
Yeah. But anyways, so in terms of the vehicles, that's just how I seen everything.
Different setups, different mindsets, different terrain, different environments.
Yeah. I would say that, like I said,
there is no perfect vehicle.
There isn't. No, right. I'm happy with just like a vehicle that's from the factory that's made for that type of thing. I think that's a safe bet. You know what I mean? But going into that, you know, like our first day, just talking about mindsets and tempo and everything like that. Our first day was very chill and like everybody was lax. We just, like I said, we're camping out of our cars and set up a fire and everything was cool. And I think it felt like camping, right? Second day that changed real quick because second day we all know we're about to go on a hike and things like that, you know? So first night was all giggles and hiking in the dark with fucking night vision, you know, everything's chill. Don't see any animals except like bats or whatever.
Well, it's cold.
Yeah, exactly.
Not really
cold as fuck.
There's not a lot of food available yet, right?
Yeah, and then that second day, I think everybody had the same mindset initially when we got to like the spot where we're starting like our hike up to get to the lake or whatever. And as I see everybody like prepping their bags, I didn't really say a lot about like my gear or whatever, because this is my first time doing something like this. So like they had helped me put together like a backpacking bag. So I bought like an Osprey bag, I think it's like a 48 liter. And I had to do night vision because that's part of like what we're doing here is like we're working on night vision stuff. So I had to like put my helmet and my nods in there.
Some more stuff.
Yeah. And I kind of knew though that even though we weren't entirely sure what to expect because none of us had been here before, I was like, I'm not gonna go full kit, full tactical dude on this, because even though we're training to like go to things like the Milsim Airsoft events where it's mandatory to wear kit for 3 days and live out of a 3-day bag, even if that's the training environment that we're working towards.
You're not ready for that yet.
I'm not ready for that yet. I was trying to piece things together. I was just trying to survive because this entire time, don't get me wrong, I was scared. I was having a good time, but I was definitely scared. Right? No, the entire time.
What were you scared of?
Because
just because it was new.
I've never backpacked. So it wasn't the physicality. It was, we're about to backpack up a snowy mountain and anything could fucking happen.
The exposure. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And the fact is that I built my bag the night before.
I think that's very common.
Anything that you do the night before is not very comforting.
Generally bad,
yeah. Yeah. But
I think it's worse. Some people will order the shit and not even build it themselves, right? They'll order one pre-made.
Oh, yeah.
Like, because there's companies out there like, oh, here's the perfect 3-day go bag. You know, just for, oh, great. So I can just buy my security, buy my comfort, you know, buy my way out of this exposure that you're talking about. And it shows up, you unwrap it, throw it on, you're good to go, right?
I think you and me have talked about this a ton with like fitness and firearms. Like you can't just like buy your gear, like in cameras. I've learned that plenty with cameras recently. Like you actually have to like learn how to use this shit, understand why. Yeah. So yeah, I was scared, man. Cause like they helped me build the necessities for my bag. And I kind of just always known, cause I've always kind of been into prepping even before I worked out or did anything shotguns. I just always, not doomsday prepping, but just like the idea of a go bag.
Being ready to go if you needed to.
Yeah. That's always been a thing since forever. So like I put this bag together that's very basic. I just had like a couple tourniquets and like a stop the bleed kit, but I knew going in this that we had like a team mindset. You know what I mean? Like I knew that I had asked everybody what kind of shit they're bringing. And like I was vocal about, okay, so I'm not going to bring this because you guys have this, right? Like
it's redundant.
Yeah, exactly. I was like shovels are things we don't need 3 of, right? Because they're heavy and they're not that important, right? So my point is things
particularly
like that.
not for the time you were spending out there and what you were doing.
Yeah, and so all of us are all setting up, and I'm just thinking in my head, like, I just need this backpack to survive 3 days. I need to have enough food and water. I had 2 hard canteens, 2 empty soft canteens with a water filter with filled up like hard canteens with water. I had enough food. Looking back after experiencing this whole thing, I probably had enough snacks to last a week, no problem. Like probably a shitty week, but you know, a week. I had my sleeping bag. I had like 5 layers of clothing, like tank top, couple cottons, and a windbreaker and a winter jacket. But the thing is, I didn't do things like the plate carrier because, like I said, I was just trying to survive. Like, realistically, I'm not scared somebody's going to shoot me on the side of the snowy mountain. I'm scared of predators. So I definitely brought my Glock. I brought my G45 with 4 magazines, 1 on me, 3 in the bag. Mm-hmm. Right. And even then I felt like 4 magazines might've been a bit much. I just did it anyways.
Depends on how long you're going to be out there for.
Yeah,
what
exactly.
You're going to be exposed to and what you're using it for. If you're going to the mountains like that or you're getting away, the whole point is to be away.
Yeah.
Like you're getting away. You're not walking into a war zone.
Exactly. Right.
You're not walking into a war zone.
Yeah. So like, I understand that like our group, we were trying to prepare for, not only do we do like airsofting and like we do want to be prepped, but Milsim's like a very serious thing where you have to be kitted.
I get it, but that's a different, you can't train it all at the same time.
No way.
Right.
And I knew that because like I said, this whole time I was scared. I was like, I'm going to check my ego. I'm just going to pack survival shit only. I'm going to have my G45. Dude, I fucking make hella shit. And the G45 I brought only had base plates. It was a stock G45 completely, only base plates. Didn't have any other fucking mods that could be weird in cold weather or slamming against a rock, or not that I think anything's bad on like mods. You know how I run my shit. I run it hard anyways, but I was that scared and
basic.
You know what I mean? I was just like, I need to just survive. That's it.
Stay in basic. Yep.
And like I packed like a ton of Ziploc bags, a trash bag with like just batteries for everything I have, 2 different lights, like a neck light, headlamp light, I should say, my mod light, a couple big lighters, a torch lighter and a big lighter. Yeah, and that was basically it, dude. Oh, by the way, I also brought $10,000 in camera equipment. So that was really fucking scary because
it's also taking up a lot of space in the bag. And
it was in a Pelican, a waterproof Pelican. Like, you know how those go. So that actually took up like 40% of my bag. And I had 2 lenses, you know, and one of my lenses is like fucking huge.
Right.
Because that's something I'm into. And part of this, like you said, was for fun. We wanted to test ourselves, but part of it, like, you know, I like to document everything anyways, but I like really enjoy being behind the camera when I don't have to be in front of it. So like, yeah, dude, I spent a lot of weight and space on my camera. And that's why I was vocal to my buddies, like, hey man, are you carrying this? You got a saw, you got a shovel, you got Band-Aids. You know what I mean? Cause I wanted to be able to document this stuff, and enjoy myself, you know? So I would say I packed
that's pretty light.
Pretty light. And I was wearing my Vans MTEs, by the way. Everybody's wearing Salomon's, boots, crazy shit. I was wearing Vans MTEs, which if you don't know what those are the hiker version of the Vans classic shoe. And I'd use those for everything, for working out and for just range, whatever. So I feel like I was pretty basic. I was the only one in the flannel. Everybody was like pretty much kitted up, except the backpackers that we were with. We were with 2 backpackers. And they were only wearing Columbia pretty much. That's like their jam.
Got it.
Yeah. So no kit for them. They had the lightest packs for sure. Just single person tents and sleeping bags, water, food, period.
Yeah. That was it. So kind of, you might even refer to those like a fast packer.
Yeah.
It's absolute bare minimum. By the way, you're only out there for a couple of nights. So how much gear are you really going to need?
Yeah. And they had like dry, like freeze dried food, which weighs nothing.
Right.
You know what I mean? So anyway, before I like completely derail on that. And then, you know, a bunch of my friends were trying to get ready. We all shoot together. We all train at the gym together. We all airsoft together. So guess what they were wearing to get prepared for Milsim? Full kit. The entire Cry outfit, ballistic helmet, bump helmet, night vision on their head. I put my night vision strapped to my bag.
Okay, let me ask you something. So when you go to these Milsim events, is it going to be in the Sierra Nevada mountains, right?
Yes.
At plus 12,000 feet, right? With temperatures ranging from mid 70s during the day to below 30 at night, right? In this type of terrain.
Yeah. No, so not at all. So I think when we came back from the whole trip, we talked about that a little bit. And I forget if it was Bryant or Will that was like, dude, I think it was Bryant that was like, I think you guys need to realize that Milsim is all flat ground and it's cold and windy and it might be rainy, but it's all flat and you're within a perimeter. You know what I mean? So like, there's not really like fear for like death, like, you know what I mean? And there's not really any like elevation or like, there's not true like strenuous activity, you know, like you're engaging threats. Heart rate gets jacked up for however long the firefight happens, and then you're
not doing 2,000 feet of vertical climbing up a mountain again at alpine heights.
Oh yeah,
dude, above 10,000.
The wind was piercing our skin, and it was snowy. You know what I mean? And it was uphill only.
So I'm saying you probably went out. I'm not even gonna say over prepared. It was just like an inappropriate gear for.
Yeah, it was just a different mindset. And like the mindsets going into this, like I said, it was like the backpackers who they just enjoyed this and they had some experience. So they joined us. And then all of us as a group were trying to get ready for Milsim, which I've never been to one, but they've all been to one. And I was getting ready too. But like I said, the way I approached this was like, I just need to survive. I'm going to carry 1 gun, 4 mags, everything else outside of that and night vision, no chest rig, no kit, no plate carrier, no cries. I'm wearing jeans. Cause like realistically outside of Milsim, if I had to bug out, I'm grabbing this bag, I'm wearing jeans and a flannel. And that's what I wore on this trip. You know what I mean? So, I almost felt like I was like underprepared until we went out there and went up the hill and like a 1/4 mile up this mountain, dude. Everybody that was like, looked like they were like ready for fucking war. And I'm not trying to shoot shots or anything like that. I love these guys. Like we all had a great time. Literally it was all positive vibes almost the entire time. So, but 1/4 mile up the hill, dude.
Dragging ass.
The 2 people who had the most kit were dragging ass. It got to the point where we had to stop very often. Like, and so we're at 12,000 feet at the top of this mountain, and I consider myself pretty fit, and I'd have to take 30-second little breathers because
you're not adapted yet.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, but 30 seconds, I'm ready to go. I'd literally sit on a log for 30 seconds and I'd be ready to go.
Yeah. Put more oxygen back in the system. Yeah. Get it going.
Yeah, and with these guys, I was trying to push the pace a little bit, not because I'm a dickhead, but because I was fearful that the sun's going down. We started the hike in the snow up this mountain at like 3 p.m. and it was taking us way too long to get up.
Because of the vehicle issues.
No. Day one was the vehicle issues. Day two up the snow, it was just us and our bags.
Gotcha.
Whatever we had, all just us.
Okay, gotcha.
And physically, people were just having a hard time getting up. And a part of that, like I said, it could be the fact that like if you would have thrown all that kit on me, would I have had a great time going up? Probably not. But there is a physical aspect. And a mindset going into it. I still feel like even though we were getting prepped, I still couldn't wrap my head around the idea of like having a full 3-day bag with all the kit and everything like that. Cause I know I personally have heard people like Warrior Poets Society and like Grantham talk about how like they're not wearing like, multiple guns, multiple mags and like plate carriers when they have like week-long rucks. If that's like a real life mission, sometimes they don't even have a sidearm. You know what I mean? From what I remember. So I'm thinking this and I'm like, all I have is a sidearm. So maybe I can spare a little bit more weight, but yeah, dude, I just think, some people were underprepared in terms of survival and over-prepared in terms of tactics and, like being tactically prepared, I should say, or, we didn't have carbines, but we had everything else in our group, you know what I mean? Like multiple fucking, like just name it. We had it, dude. So, we were stopping often and it started to get scary, honestly, cause we're in the snow and, there's a lot of, we're starting to lose the trail and there's a lot of stopping and the sun's like burning. And so we actually had to we were a quarter mile from like this icy lake, which was supposed to be where our destination, you know what I mean? And you know me, I'm like fucking loving my camera out there. So I'm like, let's get to this fucking lake, and then we actually had to stop. Will he's got a lot of military background for somebody who's his age. And he's just like, dude, we can't do this. We have to like make sure that the last person isn't like falling behind. Like we have to stick together and they don't look good. Like we have to do something here. So we made a decision to just like make it a camp in the nearest position from there. So we actually never made it to the lake because of that. So we had to build a camp. And then like right away we started like finding out like that all the shit that some of the people that were more tactically squared away that they brought was like actually like significantly slowing us down as a group, not just individually. And a lot of that stuff was like actually really worthless because I was like hoping we were going to see anything. It doesn't matter if it was a predator, a bird, a fucking deer. I didn't see any animals. Like it was like frogs and birds, which is weird to me. I thought we saw predators out in the snow or something, but not that I want to run into a mountain lion or anything, but,
they're all moving down to lower ground where the food's at.
Yeah. But, yeah, dude. So we had to set up camp and everything like that. And, the mindsets were interesting, dude. Cause as soon as we set up camp, the backpackers set up their single person tents by themselves in their own fucking corner and didn't help us. And then the team environment with us, like a couple of the boys, all of us had wet feet. We had soaked feet. We had to cross rivers and creeks. So a couple of our guys, we me and Bryant started a fire right away. And then a couple of them just hung out next to the fire and tried to like mentally like get back to reality because they're exhausted and they were fucking freezing balls because they were wet in the snow.
So this plays into another, again, very popular line, particularly in this last couple of weeks, which is don't be a liability, right? Be an asset. And there are a lot of things that go into that. So I'm just going to circle this back for a second with regard to this prepared mentality. And this is, kind of where this podcast ended up coming from, or this After Dark sort of version of the podcast came from, because we're cut from the same cloth in a lot of ways. And I think it's important to kind of note that preparedness doesn't mean just having a firearm and a 3-day bag ready to go. Right. Or your overland vehicle. It is a very holistic approach to being prepared. There's a mindset piece. There's a community piece. There's a mobility piece. There's a physical fitness piece. I mentioned the mindset piece, but there's also mental fitness piece of this. Then there's knowledge pieces that come into this. Like, okay, so you have all this cool stuff. Have you ever used it? Right. So there's the knowledge. What do you know about your gear, and what's the application of all of these things? And you can't YouTube your way to your own fitness, or to being fit. Sorry. You can't YouTube your way to being prepared for that vehicle issue, that you're having out there. You can't video game your way through, or to learning what it's like to have to be out there at 12,000 feet when the sun goes down and the temperature drops 20 degrees right now. You're soaking wet, and you're mentally and physically just trashed, because of the other things that I said, are ready. So it's more of there's a lot of other pieces I think that go to it. There's some pillars in there, talk about maybe a different time, but it is a very well-rounded, what we're trying to do is take a very well-rounded approach to being prepared for a lot of different things, and making sure we're not caught off guard. And if we are caught off guard, we're not mentally unfit or physically unfit to have to deal with this. Yeah. And so what I hear you saying is like, there was some fitness lacking, and again, not necessarily physical fitness. This is, I'm talking about it in the general sense, mental, emotional, and physical fitness lacking within the group and within the individuals in the group. Because what I heard you just say is kind of, when the going got tough, some people kind of separated from that. It sounded like your backpackers are like, I don't want to fucking deal with that. Yep. Like, I'm ready for this. Like, I've been here, and that's not me, and I'm not getting caught up with that. So I'm going to set up maybe over here. That could be a totally inaccurate statement, but that's what it sounds like to me.
Well, definitely wasn't a very team.
Right. That's what I mean.
Yeah. Idea.
That's what I mean.
But it was also like the people that don't regularly hang out with us. They were people who were backpackers that we thought would be a good idea.
But that is a perfect example to the know who's in your community piece. Like, know who your people are, right? And know who your neighbor is, right? Mm-hmm. You might not like that person. They might not really get along, but know what they can bring to the table, and then be an asset to them in return. What is it that you can bring to the table for them, and what is it that they can bring to the table for you? In this case, you mentioned these guys were really prepped. They understand how to be light. They understand they've got vehicles that can access these places way differently than other people. But if God forbid something went down, like if those people have assets and they're not being an asset to the community or to my community, well, guess what? If I need those assets, I know where to go. And that might sound like a horrible prepper.
No, it sounds terrible, but that's actually like human nature.
That's real life. I mean, just look at any horrific event. I mean, we have a fucking hurricane that hits a particular part of the southeast United States. And what are people doing? They're raiding one another's homes.
Yeah, it's terrible, but you know what? That's also on them, because I would never want to do that ever. But I tell you what, it definitely crossed our mind. The people that we normally train with here on the range, at the gym here at Red Dot, and airsofting together, our whole group that went into this as a team, it crossed all of our minds that like, wow, you guys really just set up single person tents in the corner over there, like, while we're building a fire and setting up camp. And then we have two people who we don't know their physical status right now, because mentally they look checked out. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? You're not thinking about the group here. So like, realistically, that wasn't even smart on their end, even as like being prepared and like trying to survive, because you don't want to piss off your neighbor, like you were saying, right? So like, you have all of us literally, some of us have Safariland holsters hanging off the side, not like a war belt, but just the Safariland on its own. Cause you don't know predators out there. Some of us, like pretty much all of us, had a gun just hanging off of us. You know what I mean? And so I think that was kind of dumb in terms of the backpackers. Like, we all got along just fine, but I'm just saying, like, that did cross our mind. Like, wow, you guys are really prepared to just survive on your own. Like, and we have two guys that look kind of sick over here.
It's just interesting to see what happens when the going gets tough. What happens? Mm-hmm. Like, people disconnect from, well, I don't want to get involved in that over there, because that looks a little rough, and that might mean that I have to contribute something that I don't really want to contribute right now. So if I just stick to myself over here, which is one way to go about it. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just maybe pointing out more of what could happen if,
I mean, just probably shouldn't try to piss off your neighbors.
Again, it's about community and coming together. And there's a lot of, sounds like, again, things got a little rough. And so people maybe started to separate a little bit, and then mindsets
They got kind of scary in terms of like how things were looking as a group. Nobody really like flared up or said anything to each other. Everybody was pretty chill in terms of our communication.
But you guys had enough food. You guys had enough water.
Exactly.
Nobody was hurt.
Nobody was worried about food.
While you were there was a little exposure and people a little uncomfortable. Let's be real. Like you guys were fine, but what happens when it's not fine?
Yeah.
You know, so
yeah. So it was a little bit alarming, and we noticed that. So it was interesting seeing how they were, and then how we had, a couple of guys who they just didn't pack properly. And like you said, there was definitely a fitness aspect there, physical fitness, but also just overall. I know that our group today at the gym was talking about how none of us were having a great time backpacking, like after so many miles and then incline and things like that. Nobody's like having this awesome time with our legs, Yeah,
it's a love-hate thing. Right?
Yeah, like 2-3 days into it, but because we're in the gym and we do like these 25-minute conditioning workouts, and then we do strength, power, and accessories. And after 2 hours of doing this together for, pretty much nonstop, we just understand like we're not going to die. We know how to go through this pain and just get through it. Like we break through that barrier. So when we're all hiking, nobody, as long as we're not like rolling our ankles, we're all like, we're just going to get past this. Everybody who worked out, you know what I mean? And I noticed it wasn't an issue for the people who come train with us all the time, straight up. Like, it wasn't an issue. Like the fitness aspect. And I'd even say that not only the fitness and possibly the consistent, that like the consistency of the nutrition.
I was just about to ask this.
Yeah. That I think that played a role in the cognitive function too.
Oh, 1000%.
So for me, when I'm at home, I eat steaks, eggs, kimchi, a little bit of fruit here and there. And I have a cheat meal once or twice a week. I'm human, but I try to do everything I can to like keep my diet to that, right? I care more about cognitive function and joint health and things like that and staying strong. So that's why I eat that way. So when I was like, I'm going to go out into the wilderness for 3 days, I didn't think I want to fucking,
probably not cooking up steaks every night.
Yeah, I'm probably not going to cook steaks, but I also have to like stick to what my body knows and is used to. Because if I start doing random shit like Twinkies are high in calories, I'm going to fucking bring that in case I need to survive. Well, that sounds like diarrhea. And who knows if, I don't know about you, I know I've dealt with caffeine and carbohydrate and sugar crashes enough in my life to understand that like, if you start relying on stuff as an energy source, like loosely, being out in the wilderness and dealing with hardship, and now you just have this random insulin spike that you're not used to, sounds like a bad deal for me.
Not to mention what can happen to your gut, which you suggested, like.
Yeah.
So going back to the nutrition piece, like I find a couple of things. So as many times I've guided plenty of trips, I've spent a good part of my life out in the wilderness and different types of wildernesses, we'll call it. From the desert to the mountains to the Sierra Mountains and even on the ocean and, rivers, lakes, things like that. Here's the point. When people get tired, right, they stop eating. Mm-hmm. They also stop drinking. They stop thinking about that stuff. Yeah. So, and when you get to elevation, dehydration is something that can set in very, very quickly, particularly when it's cold and you're sweating and there's a high energy output, right? And again, it's cool weather, so you're not really feeling it. You could be dry, right? At the same time, not really thinking about hydrating when it's the most important thing you should be doing. So you stop drinking. And the next thing you stop doing is eating, right? And then when it is time to eat, you sit down, what you put in your stomach, particularly if you're already dehydrated, particularly at whatever time you are in your hike, or let's just call the energy system balance, right? And how your body is responding to the demands you're putting on it. Generally, the GI system starts to shut down, right? It's going to shut down, particularly if your output is high. So when you are in these situations, you need to be constantly onboarding, calories throughout the day to sustain this type of activity. And again, these are civilians that are out there in the wilderness on hikes. This should be top of mind, right? It should be top of mind. But if you don't think like that regularly during the day, where you're
100% correct,
constantly in that feeding, then that's the last thing that's crossing your mind. And
so
there's probably some more aspects to this that you witnessed. I'm curious to
hear about this. Like Will and me, I feel like Will and me stuck out as the people who stayed the same the entire time. Like in terms of our morale, like how we looked, our posture, the things that we were saying, I feel like we just stayed the same the whole time. And the thing that Will and me shared is that we ate exactly the same that we would eat at home out there, just a little bit less calories because they're less accessible. Mm-hmm. And I sipped water. Anytime we stopped, somebody needs to sit down. I sipped water because guess what I do when I'm over here? The only thing that I changed out there outside of the fact that I couldn't cook steaks, and so I had to eat jerky and bison bars. Mm-hmm. Only thing I changed is I wasn't drinking 2 or 3 energy drinks a day. I was drinking 1 energy drink, for breakfast.
On the car ride up. Or
yeah. Like that was pretty much it. But I didn't have a hard time with that. But yeah, so like Will and me, I feel like we were the most consistent. Brian didn't do a bad job or anything like that. But to me, it felt like, from what I can see, Will kept trying to take like a leadership role. Like he had a lot of confidence and he was consistent. And guess what he was doing? We even talked about it afterwards because we were interested in how him and me we were both consistent, but we had different approaches.
Drinking and eating.
Yeah, exactly. And he told me, by the way, Will, this entire time just treated this like this was like another fucking day in the military. He had like a military pack, military outfit, all the same gear to survive, same eating schedule. Like literally the same eating schedule, living at a mountain house, bags, eating trail mix. Every time we stop, just a handful of trail mix. And guess what? Will is here every time we work out together.
He performs, yeah.
And Will ate exactly the same out there, outside of maybe a little bit less calories on the top because you just can't consume.
That's just what it is,
yeah. And that's the lifestyle we live here. And we went there. And like I said, this entire time, I'm not confident in myself in this whole trip because I just don't know what to expect.
Just because of the environment, yeah, and the unknown.
Yeah, and I think you know this, I get cold easily too. So I'm like, fuck, we're in the snow hiking. But I also stayed moving, so it never was an issue, and I packed accordingly with my clothes. So I think the fitness aspect and the nutrition aspect played a big role because on the opposite end of that, we had somebody who doesn't work out with us who definitely carried too much gear. The kit was just too much, dude. Even for me, I feel like it might have been over the top. And that was hitting him, but he also didn't work out with us. And then how often was he drinking and eating? I don't know. I'd never seen him drink or eat outside of us fully stopping to eat lunch, eat breakfast. If it wasn't one of those, there was no snacking that I could see, and I could be wrong. And also another one of our buddies who does work out with us here, he did what most people do. And I get pretty influenced by influencers, but I don't think I would go out into the snow and try this and try to survive. But, right now, Garantham's pretty big in terms of like recce kits.
He's blowing it up, man.
Yeah. Recce kits, survival stuff. I
like Garant. I think he does a great job.
Yeah. He's entertaining.
You love him or hate him,
Yeah. But I mean, like he's put out a lot of information recently on like recce survival, kits, gear, 3-day bags. And so, and we all know gummy bears is a military thing. You need to survive. You need quick calories, sugar, carbs. Gummy bears is the best thing for your body.
Shit happening in the gym all the time. Like people are like,
powerlifters. I used to hate that, dude.
Intra-workout gummy bears.
I hated going to Olympic weightlifting events and seeing somebody down a bag of Sour Patch Kids. And I'm like,
it's just sugar.
Bro, like that's not healthy. You know what I mean? We're not surviving here. You're lifting weights.
Well, either way, like I mean, I think there's a lot of ways to get that in. If you choose gummy bears, that's fine. I don't think it's the best way, but it's not for me anyway. But whatever.
I love gummy bears, but I don't eat them.
Yeah, I got you.
But I will say that I'm pretty sure everybody there, including me, had a pack of gummy bears in their bag because the truth is it does have value.
Yeah, whether you're taking a gel pack like a power shot or something like that, or using gummy bears, it's basically the same. Right. And with regard to the substrates that your body needs, that you're inputting that your body needs in order to perform in those levels. And it's very easily digestible. Yep. It's not going to lock you up. Right. But at the same time, it's very short-lived.
Very short-lived.
Very short-lived. And to your point before, like this is how you eat regularly and consistently throughout the day because you're eating to fuel your body, not eating just because you're hungry. Right. Yep. And you're not listening to that signal that I'm not hungry. No, I need to eat because I need to make sure I get these macronutrients and these micronutrients and this fuel into my body so that I can meet the demands of what I'm putting it through right now in terms of the regular day. And then what it's going to be facing later when I get to the gym or whatever else. Right. So if you're one of those people that gets up and I don't really eat breakfast. I have my coffee or whatever. And then, when I get to lunch, I'll have a salad or a yogurt. And then, I'll have my dinner at the end of the day or whatever else. And then some snack or, then some late night gummy bears or whatever else. And you take that type of behavior into this type of environment, you're going to find out real fucking fast how inappropriate, inefficient, and ineffective all of that ends up being.
Yeah, and like I was saying, like the gummy bears have their place, and it's how they're applied. I bought them, never used them, never needed them because I packed what I thought was 3 days, ended up being like a week's worth of snacks in my bag.
Yeah,
now I know. But dude, the entire time I was eating a Bison bar every hour and a half, an RX bar, RX bar mini, not even a full bar. Just eat a little bit of sugar and healthy carbs and fiber. If I felt like I needed a little pick me up, it was all completely controlled. And to be honest with you, my diet was just that much more clean and that much more on time when I was out there. And not to toot my own horn, but I feel like that's exactly how you're supposed to be going into that. Like, I need to clean this up because I need consistency out here because I need one less thing to worry about in terms of survival.
Yeah, the last thing you need is to be, again, your GI tract shut down or shut down and then wreak total havoc on it, right? So I think what you were saying there is a gummy bear set aside to get off that topic, but what you were saying there is people trying new things that they've never tried before or doing something completely out of the norm in this situation, which would be like the equivalent of a marathon runner, right? Training in a pair of shoes or a couple of different pairs of shoes, the same shoes basically for her entire year getting ready for their marathon. And then the night before the fucking marathon, they take a brand new pair of shoes out of the box and then their feet blow up the next day, blisters, the whole 9 yards, because it's a completely different pair of shoes that you're going to be going to compete in this event. And like, why would you do that? It's an interesting mindset that I see people
exactly.
do.
And
whether that's gear, food, whatever,
just habits, but mindset. Yeah. Like to me, I was thinking about all this stuff as we were going through it. And I kept thinking I was underprepared this whole time, but like as the trip and the hikes and everything, the backpacking, as it progressed, I started to realize that my fitness level, and the sharpness and the cognitive function I had from being perfect on my diet while I was out there. Cause they were kind of giving me shit, like joking with me, but truly honestly trying to figure out why I was only eating like bison jerky, beef jerky, and RX bars. Like I said, if I needed some sugar, carbs, and fiber, which is pretty much just all whole foods and dried foods. Like, and I had specific type of jerkies that I ate, but those are all things that I eat on a daily basis here. So if you take away the steak and you add more jerky, that's replacing like the protein and like the micronutrients that you'd get from like red meat.
Right. Whatever.
Right. So they were all kind of worried about it, but I asked them, I was like, have you guys seen me act like weird, loopy, low on energy or anything? Like, no. And I was like, well,
it's because your body's adapted to that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. And dude, I felt great the whole time. And I almost felt like food tasted better.
Yeah. It's interesting, right?
Yeah. And you can feel a lot more out there in silence and you're just hearing the wind and like, anyways, without going off onto that, point is that like the consistency and like the preparedness and the mindset and having the discipline to not just like do what's like the hype.
Yeah, it's just weird. Like the people would have the expectation that if I have all this gear and I just do these things, then everything's going to work itself out fine when there's so much more work that needs to be done. And the balance of how that work gets done is I think where people struggle. Like, man, I got to have a vehicle that I could, that's prepped. Well, it doesn't have to look like a freaking, like overland vehicle packed with, weeks worth of food and shelter and all that stuff. But do you have the ability, if you got stuck? I mean, we saw this happen when we opened up a podcast with one of this when we first started this beginning of this year. I think it was Virginia, where people were stuck out on the freeway for like a week and they were stuck in a car with the freak ice and snowstorm that was going on out there. Do you have a way to stay warm? Do you have a way to stay dry? Do you have a way to communicate if you need to communicate? Do you have a way to start a fire to, again, stay warm? Do you have water on board? It's the basic necessities to keep you going through, which are these are vital. These are not things that you should have to be told as a human. You just don't think about it. So until it's like, oh shit, right? Which is the whole shit hits the fan. Like we're not talking about the fucking end of the world. Where it's like, oh my God, like this just happened and am I ready for this? So that speaks to the mindset piece. So it's not you're thinking about disaster happening every day, all day. It's just like, hey man, if something went down, would I have enough here to feed myself, my family, my friends, or again, I just listed a few things there, but it's the mindset.
Yeah.
It's a mindset of just being ready for whatever life might throw at you.
Yeah, I think the mindset was way stronger than I anticipated in terms of me going into it, because like, I know I keep saying that, like I was really nervous because I've never been like in a survive out of a backpack situation.
Oh, I think it's awesome that you're being, that honest and upfront about it.
Yeah.
Considering how skilled you are in so many other ways that you prep.
Yeah.
Right. So again, like your 1 second, your subset 1 second draw time isn't going to do fucking shit for you in this situation. Right.
Yeah.
So you could spend hours and hours and hours during the week practicing your draw and your accuracy or whatever, but what happens when you're in this particular environment?
Yeah. If we're like, if you're a competition shooter, that's one thing. But if you're in our group, which our group that we tend to hang out with most of the time is like, we like overlanding, we like backpacking, we like shooting, we like airsoft, we like fitness. You kind of know where I'm going with this. Yeah. So if it's, we like all this shit, then you kind of got to be well-rounded and you got to think about all this stuff. So yeah, it was a little crazy seeing the morale difference with people and like people looking / feeling sickly because of the physical aspect, but also because the inconsistency in trying new nutrition ideas, because that's what the newest hype is. And I'm sure there's validity to what Grantham's saying when he does like a peanut butter super greens.
There's some value in all of it.
Right? Yeah. I personally wasn't trying to try it out then. I was trying to, I'll try that out at home. And even then, I don't know how much I tried that out, because I believe that my nutrition was working just fine when I was out there eating a ton of fucking jerky and like RX bars. Right. You know what I mean? And
there is no one size fits all.
Yeah.
But maybe not try something completely off the norm in a situation where you're going to be challenged, where then that takes away from the value of the experience that you're trying to have. Right.
Yeah.
Like if you're not fueled and you're not hydrated, or your gut's fucked up because you did something, outside of the norm, because you weren't really thinking straight about all that. Now you're not getting the value out of all the things that you had planned on trying to get out of it.
Yeah.
And none of the gear you're wearing matters at that point.
Yeah. That's true. And to be fair, like I said, we changed plans a little bit here and there along the trip. So nobody really knew exactly what to expect in terms of packing. But I will say that the fact that I didn't know what to expect, and the only thing I really gathered is that we're going to be backpacking, living out of bags, and then asking and like confirming that you have a saw, you have a shovel, you have Band-Aids. After like that, I feel like I was actually more prepared than I thought I was. I was the one fucking collecting wood and chopping wood. Like when it came down to like having to make sure our homies were good and they were chilling next to a fire, Bryant and me put together a fire. I started building like wooden and stone walls around our camp, and fucking Will was like, hey man, I'm going to start chopping down pine branches to make a bed and to make pine branch walls. So like right away I could tell who like was sharper and more like prepared. I mean, let's just call it what it is. It's prepared, right? Because if they physically were able to be like, okay, let's start a fire. Okay, let's start building shelter, like then and there. And then we all had good communication with each other. Those happen to be the people that train everything, including fitness, and also didn't derail their diet so crazy. And it's just a whole thing. Like I said, like the consistency of their routine and what they train. So I just thought that was really interesting. The power of fitness, mindset, and kind of just like mental fortitude, like going into that. I don't know, that kind of surprised me. But even with all that being said, we decided to go back downhill after building like a super dope fucking camp, dude. I was so proud of it. I took pictures and video of it because, Will made a good call. He was like, hey man, if people are actually feeling sickly and the winds were heavy and we're on the side of a snowy mountain, not like blizzards, but like there's snow, right where we're sleeping. You know what I mean? He's like, hey man, I think we should head downhill, or at least give these guys the option to head downhill before the sun goes down, because they shouldn't be miserable out here. Like we're building cover and shelter, but we don't have like a real house. Like we're building like stone and branch walls.
There's the value of the community looking out for one another.
Exactly. So I really like commend Will for taking a lot of leadership roles in this whole thing. And like, we actually like convened a lot. Like we stopped a lot and talked about like, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? And, you know, it didn't take long for the guys that were not feeling too hot to be like, dude, let's head downhill, you know? And so like the fitness aspect plays a role, because what happened at that point is I put on somebody's plate carrier with everything I already had on, all my camera gear and stuff. Not like shit ton of camera gear, but you know, I had a ton of stuff on me, and Will slapped one of our other buddies' plate carriers over his bag, and we fucking raced home. You know what I mean? Not home, but like back to the cars, you know what I mean? To where we parked at the bottom of the mountain. And we got there just in time, you know, it was dark at the bottom. So it's really interesting to see like what being in the gym and learning pain and endurance and all that stuff does for you. And then also like your nutrition consistency and how that keeps you sharp, and like where your mind's at, you know what I mean? And like I said, it was cool that we were like teammates, which by the way, our friends that are like the backpackers we invited, they ended up staying up there in their tents. They did just fine. They had like Sub-Zero sleeping attire, you know,
they're ready to roll.
Yeah. So
they went up there for an adventure.
Yeah, exactly. So we ended up heading back, but I noticed right away that the morale of our group instantly spiked when we got back inside of our cars, blasting heaters, boiling up food in the back of their trucks, or grilling up food, whatever, you know. Excuse me. So definitely a huge learning experience for me, whether it was just from the vehicle aspect or like the fitness, preparedness, or the teamwork, like communication and the teamwork. Like we actually all needed each other's bags, like our core group.
Something from everybody was contributing some particular variable to the group that was vital.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. Like without Will, we wouldn't have like a shovel, and we wouldn't have had all like the pine support, you know what I mean? Like to build the shelter. And without fucking Bryant, we wouldn't have had the saw to cut all the wood and everything like that. You know what I mean? And medical was with Nick, you know, so overall, like we kind of needed each other. So it was good that like we did build a little bit more, not only as like friends, but like as like a team environment, that we do train everything together. And I've only known these guys for less than a year. So for me, that was like a huge, like, okay, cool. Like, I feel like we bonded a little bit more, but we all are coming home with something to like, fuck, like
you get some wounds to lick.
Yeah. Yeah. So
I'm interested in that. Like so you've already mentioned some things, but what were like the biggest key takeaways for you going back? You've mentioned like where you felt like your fitness and nutrition and your mental fortitude kind of were huge pluses for you, and that was on the winning side of things.
Yeah.
What were some of, if you can put your finger on any like other major takeaways for yourself that going back into this situation you would definitely do differently than what you just did?
Since we went in as a team, I think we were covered with what we could have done. If we ended up staying up on the fucking snowy mountain, I think we were going to be as good as we could have been, given we all had fucking wet shoes, you know?
Mm-hmm. That's a problem.
I asked them though, like, I was like, guys, really though, like, what could I have been better at other than like more than an overnight's notice building a bag? Because there's little things that they helped me with that I just didn't have the gear.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that they could really put a finger on it other than comms, like actual radios, which is very important because you don't have cell phone service anywhere. It's just spotty. It's like you might have a dot here and you might not ever have a dot of service again. So I think that was the one thing that they told me that I needed. And that's the same thing with Airsoft. I borrow their comms anytime we do team stuff.
Yeah, you mentioned that. Yeah.
So they just said like comms, like not like me and the way I communicate. Cause I'm like, I was communicating a lot. Like as soon as we were stopping, I was like building shit and wasn't that. So other than like the actual gear aspect, I don't really know what else I could have done differently.
Yes, it's one of those things that probably comes with more experience, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you need to stay up there on the snow one night to know what that's like, right?
That fucking kills me, man. Yeah. I want it so bad
this is what I'm trying to bring to the table. Like the value in the experience, there was some of it was taken away because you guys were looking out for other people, which is the right thing to do.
Yeah.
But all I'm saying is like when within your community, like you have a responsibility to that community to, you know, come to the table and be able to support the community. And you did that. Yeah. And as a result, you had some stuff taken away from you, had an experience taken away from you.
Yeah.
Not easy to get as we open this up. Like, You could pack up your stuff and you could go back out there by yourself, but that's a different experience.
Oh, that definitely is.
Way different experience. Yeah. Or go out with one other person, still a different, all of these are different experiences. And you would have learned, you could have learned more. Not that you didn't learn valuable things. You, like what you saw was, Jesus, when we get heat, food, and water back into people, like, damn, they're completely different humans.
Yep.
And also something to take into consideration is just the elevation. I mean, I don't know exactly how much elevation you actually climbed, but if every couple hundred feet can make a massive difference in terms of oxygen saturation, right? In within blood. So those could have been major factors for particularly whether you're in shape or out of shape. So as you get to lower elevation, those things play in. Have you ever spent days or several hours at that 12,000 feet is very high. It's pretty high.
Yeah, that was the destination. So I'm assuming we were somewhere around 10.
Yeah, that's pretty high. So it definitely there gets thin. It gets crispy. If you're from the lowland parts of California, that is definitely a different situation. I mean, we're below sea level here in San Jose.
Yeah,
you know, and a good part of the Central Valley where you're at is as well. But the point of that is like you learn that like shit, we got to keep people fed. So we got to keep people fed. We got to keep them hydrated, and we got to keep them warm. Because when that
in a team environment, that's something I could have done better. Will was doing really good of like hovering around the slower people in the group, and I think that's because of his military background. If I had to go back with those same guys, I would have asked them to drink and snack every time we had to sit down on a tree stump to catch our breath.
You almost got to demand it.
Yeah. And it's not like we didn't ask these people, by the way, on the way up to like let us take a load off their back on the way up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But that's a big thing.
How that works. Yeah.
That's a big thing too. You know, like ego goes into it, but also some people wanted to push themselves and they just didn't know when the wheels would fall off.
Yeah. So when it comes to like looking at things like your survivability rating, right? Whatever that is, whatever that scale looks like, people could be listening to this and going, dude, I'm never fucking going up into the wilderness with the backpack on. This is so not me. I would never do that. Well, we just had an incident. Was it last year? It was in 2020 or it was 2021. It was 2021 where basically Texas froze over.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And all those factors I just mentioned, being hungry, being cold, and being dehydrated all became factors very, very fast for people inside their own homes. People died as a result. And again, go back to the morale factor and what that does to your survivability rating, if you will, in any kind of a situation, right? That mental fortitude, that being okay. Like when you start taking away those basic things from people, that's when shit starts to get real bad real fast. And I'm not even getting into like hypothermia and what happens then. I'm just talking about being cold and uncomfortable, right?
Yeah.
And not being able to deal with that stuff. So things to think about, like, okay, maybe you're not at 10,000 to 12,000 feet of elevation in the Sierra Nevadas with snow on the ground, right? And, you know, sub 30 temperatures, wind blowing. But again, I just mentioned the Virginia being stuck on the highway. I mean, people are going, oh, we live in California, you know, this shit never happens. Well, we just had some pretty crazy fucking fires here in 2020, which displaced people really fast, made people really uncomfortable. And guess what's going to happen? We're going to have another one. Like, it's coming.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean,
it's right around the corner. We're in the height of the fire season.
I would say that I'm really, really happy with the performance of my vehicle. A Jeep Renegade isn't like the most sought after overlanding vehicle, you know?
Probably not.
But like I said, it's got a stock lift, 4-wheel drive and all that stuff. And it held up really good, dude. And you know what's crazy is outside of my backpack, I traded my range equipment for that backpack. That's the only thing that changed. And I survived out of it the same way with the same pack of waters I keep in my trunk, with the same box of RX bars, box of Epic Bison bars.
It's the basics, man.
Yeah, like all that shit. Like I survived out of it. Like if right here leaving this place right now, I had to be in the same car. It's the same fucking car.
Right. I think there's a ton of value in that. Right. And I've been in that same situation myself. Like I know it's in my vehicle. It's been set up a very particular way. Like I can walk out of here. I have a bag by the door that I could grab, whether I was in my vehicle or not in my vehicle, which is something to also think about, right? Because if you don't have access to your vehicle or you can't get out, like I live in a city area. I mean, if it's impassable and I can't get out of my vehicle, am I prepared otherwise?
Yeah.
Right. And thinking about those, this is all mindset stuff. And again, people are like, oh, dude, this is like all doomsday and shit. Well, I don't know. You watch the news right now. Things are looking so hot out there.
Just I mean, I don't want to me at all.
I don't want to go down there. I don't think it's far fetched at all. I mean, if you're living in certain parts of Europe right now, you're
yeah, for sure.
You're feeling it, like some worse than others, unfortunately. But the point of this is just, again, maybe some different perspective in your experience. And I really appreciate you coming to the table, kind of like in this really honest, kind of vulnerable position of, man, this is my first experience. I really haven't had a lot of experience. I mean, I've camped out, but I haven't like done this kind of camping and been forced with these things, particularly with other people. And good thing that you had people with you that could read the signs and be more of a leadership role, because that just prepares you more for the next time. And I think, whether you're doing that with your buddies or doing that with your family or doing it with a group of families or whatever, there's so many things that can be extracted from these experiences. Yeah. And you touched on another thing, which I don't think can be talked about enough. And that's just being out in nature, right?
Dude.
And the takeaways that you get from that. I mean, you mentioned like, dude, you don't really have cell reception. Well, that could make a lot of people very, very nervous and anxious about not having that. But I'm going to tell you want to feel cleansed, turn your fucking phone off for 3 days and see what happens. I mean, everything in your whole nervous system just gets down regulated. Now add the beauty of the mountains, the fresh air, the clean water, the snow, the little wildlife that you see. You, like you said, I noticed my food tasted better. It's the same shit you eat every day. But it seemingly tasted better.
It tasted better. It was like a higher level of appreciation. I ate it slower.
Right.
You know what I mean? Yeah, dude. And like the last day that we were there, because of how heavy that hit the group, we ended up just going, staying on the same level as our cars, not going up the mountain in the snow anymore. We just stayed by the river, and everybody was just, morale was high. Everybody's having a great time. Sun was out. Fucking Will was just kicking it, sunbathing next to the river. And we seen fucking beavers taking pictures, and everything was all good all of a sudden. Right. You know what I mean? So nature's awesome, but also like you said, dude, when shit gets thick, dude, it's kind of crazy how fast everything can flip.
Falls apart,
yeah. A couple of little side notes. Your car is an extension of these trips too, right? So I noticed that me having like extra pair of shoes and stuff like that in the car, that helped me comfort-wise when we actually finished all the backpacking and everything like that. Things to think about. I think only like one other person had another pair of shoes on him after we just walked through rivers and shit like that. Yeah. You know what I mean? And yeah, even if you're tactical, dude, like there's no reason to wear a plate carrier in the woods. There's just, if we're not actually like in war, like at the most I'd wear a chest rig. I find that usable for boo-boo kits and like maybe holstering a handgun. Mm-hmm. But I would rather carry camera equipment, to be honest. Yeah.
Yeah. Or more food in your pack, or, more survival gear versus getting shot at gear. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we didn't even see bears and lions. So, I mean, how much guns did we really even need?
Yeah. You know? Who knows though? If you'd sat out there longer, maybe you would have. But that being said, like, I can appreciate that statement. Everything that you do, it's not like again, I don't think it's weird for you to be thinking like, hey, I'm going on this trip right now. Is my car prepped? I know my car's prepped every day to a certain extent, right? If I'm going on a little longer road trip or a little longer distance where I'm going to be a little bit more exposed, then I take a little bit more care and put a little bit more thought into what's on board or what I'm.
The snow's a little extreme.
What's not? What's not on board? So that's just the preparedness mindset, right? It's not an OCD crazy business. It's, well, I'm packing my bag to be gone for a couple of days, right? What else might I be thinking about that I might need? And everybody knows that person that overpacks their bags. They're going away for 2 days and they have to check a bag on an airplane. Like I don't do that because airlines fuck up my bags, right? They lose my shit, and then my whole time is ruined on the other end. So if it doesn't fit in something I can carry on, I'm probably not taking it. I can go as long as a week in a carry-on bag. Generally speaking, be pretty comfortable. But my point of that is like I'm thinking beyond that. Like, okay, so this is what's on me, but if I'm going in the car, like, what might the car need in a week, right? What might, again, am I prepared for certain situations? It's just thinking about things differently. And oftentimes until you get these experiences like you've just had, it's really hard to think through it. And so where are people going to get this information? They're going to YouTube, they're going to social media, they're Googling it, and they're not spending enough time practicing it, right? Or practically applying it. It doesn't mean you have to do what you did, but fuck, it's the summer, right? Here in the United States, like maybe plan a weekend where you can go out and experience this stuff if you haven't, or call up a buddy, call up some friends, call up your brother who knows how to do this stuff or feels more comfortable or whatever. Get out and experience it, because what you could take away from that could ultimately help you or somebody else in a really tough, tight, uncomfortable situation. And again, that's just a perspective we're, I guess, trying to bring to it without getting too crazy.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, we didn't really cover urban stuff, but everything else, man, like we covered as much as we possibly could have with like the
time that you had.
The time we had. Like, I could be better at land nav. I have friends that were there that are better, that were handling that. I could buy comms and I will buy comms, but other than that, I'm very pleased with everything else, how it went. Just me being the normal person that I am, with my car, my fitness level, my nutrition, my cognitive function.
Those are all very basic things that you have full control over.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. Versus, and you're not depending on some piece of gear for, right? Like that's the work that you've put in. So yeah, I can appreciate that too. I think more people need to take responsibility for that. Leave the Gucci gear, in the shopping cart on the online shopping thing. Just leave it there for a minute, and let's talk about how to take care of yourself so that the gear matters, but the gear isn't the difference between you performing or not performing in this case. Because I didn't hear at any point that you said their gear wasn't well. I heard a vehicle wasn't probably up to par, but it wasn't because we weren't outfitted with gear.
Yeah.
We weren't outfitted from, again, a physical, mental, emotional perspective, and then there was some gear stuff. But
it was nice though. Today at the gym, everybody seemed, at least in my eyes, a little bit more excited to work out and work towards something.
It's purposeful. Right now. Now they have something to to apply to. I'm not just suffering here for the sake of suffering. Maybe lose a little body fat, build a little muscle. Like, this is functional. Yeah. Right. So going back to like the functional end of the fitness training, this stuff translates. So again, just think about that when you're putting your gear together, putting your fitness together, putting your nutrition together, putting your mindset together. Does it translate?